On October 8, 2021, surveillance cameras at Atlanta's Peachtree DeKalb Airport captured something that still leaves investigators shaking their heads. A sleek, turbine-converted Cessna P210 accelerating down the runway, lifting off, and then, out of nowhere, pitching nearly straight up, rolling left, flipping inverted, and slamming into the ground in seconds. On board were 47-year-old pilot and businessman Jonathan Rosen, his 14-year-old daughter Allison, her 13-year-old friend Julia Smith, and Rosen's longtime assistant, Lauren Harrington. All were killed instantly. But here's what the video didn't show. This wasn't just pilot error. What the NTSB found, buried in the wreckage, was a chain of hidden risks, mechanical oversights, and missed precautions that turned a tiny, almost trivial mistake into an irreversible aerodynamic death spiral. Let's get the short version out of the way because the what is simple. It's the why that matters. Conditions at Peachtree DeKalb Airport that day were basically perfect. Clear skies, 10 miles visibility, barely a breath of wind. The aircraft began its takeoff roll on runway 2, one about 1,000 feet in. It rotated. But the moment the wheels left the ground, something went very wrong. The nose didn't just rise, it lunged upward, far steeper than any normal climb. With that extreme pitch, airspeed bled off almost instantly. The left wing hit stall angle first, snapped downward, and the entire aircraft rolled left into an inverted attitude. At this altitude, barely off the runway, there was no time, no space, and no aerodynamic energy to save the airplane. The NTSB combed through the wreckage and confirmed this wasn't an engine failure, not a structural failure, not weather, not bird strike. The aircraft was fully functional. The cause was human, but not in the simplistic pilot screwed up way people assume. This was a cascade of human factors traps, aligning at the exact wrong moment. And that brings us to the first major trap. Now, here's where we start understanding how this airplane was already primed to bite. The NTSB's weight and balance reconstruction showed the P210 was about 571 pounds overweight, and much worse, its center of gravity was well beyond the aft limit. And let me tell you, an aft CG airplane is like flying with a hair trigger. A tiny pitch input can become a massive nose-up rotation, and once that rotation starts, you have way less pitch authority to push the nose back down stalls don't ease in. They hit you suddenly, sharply, and asymmetrically. But why was this airplane so far aft? Well, this wasn't a stock P210. Rosen's aircraft was a Silver Eagle turbine conversion, meaning the old piston engine had been replaced with a Rolls-Royce 250 turboprop. These conversions often include auxiliary fuel systems, and reports indicate the aircraft was likely full of fuel for a direct flight to Houston. In a Silver Eagle, full fuel plus passengers plus baggage can shove the CG dangerously rearward. And just to be clear, being overweight and aft CG alone usually won't make an airplane fall out of the sky, but it will make the aircraft so pitch sensitive that if something unexpected happens, even a mild jerk on the yoke, it can instantly push the aircraft into a high-angle climb that you simply cannot recover from. The question is, what triggered that sudden pitch up at liftoff? Well, the answer is both simple and shocking. Here's the big one, the one that most people never saw coming. When investigators dug through the wreckage, they noticed something unmistakable. The pilot's seat was all the way back on its rails, with bent locking pins, gouged holes, and impact marks proving it had slammed rearward during the takeoff roll. That means the seat wasn't fully latched, and when the airplane accelerated, the seat slid backward just as Rosen was pulling for rotation. You can imagine what his hands did as his whole body jerked rearward. They pulled the yoke back with him. That's why the nose shot up like a rocket. Now, I want to be fair here. Forgetting to double-check that your seat is locked might sound like a dumb mistake, but it wasn't the only mistake. And honestly, it wasn't even the biggest one. Don't get me wrong, it absolutely mattered. But this error became lethal because everything else around it was already set up to magnify it. Because here's the twist, this airplane did not have the secondary seat stop installed, a small, inexpensive mechanical device that Cessna recommended years ago specifically to prevent this exact scenario. Cessna has a long history of seat slip incidents across its single-engine fleet, going back decades. They even issued a service bulletin urging owners to add a mechanical backup so the seat physically can't slide past a certain point. This accident aircraft didn't have that safety device, So when the seat latch didn't fully engage, there was nothing, literally nothing, stopping it from sliding backward. And if you remember, that aft CG loading meant that any sudden aft yoke input instantly produced a massive pitch-up. That's why the aircraft practically leapt into a stall, roll, inversion, impact, all within seconds. This wasn't just pilot error. This was a pilot error placed inside a perfect mechanical booby trap. Now let's talk about something that doesn't get nearly enough attention. Pilot familiarity with their specific machine. And I'm not talking about time and type on paper. I'm talking about real muscle memory experience, knowing exactly how the airplane responds in the first few seconds of takeoff when your brain is already loaded and everything is happening fast. According to lawsuit filings and local reporting, Rosen had minimal experience in this particular Silver Eagle turbine conversion. Some filings even alleged it was under 2 hours of actual flight time in this exact configuration. And remember, this isn't a normal P210. Transitioning from the piston-powered P210 to the turbine version is not a small hop. It's practically a new aircraft. A turbine engine gives you instant aggressive acceleration. Throttle response is sharper, the nose comes up quicker, rotation timing changes, pitch sensitivity changes, fuel distribution changes, and because the turbine installation shifts weight around, the entire CG envelope behaves differently. It's the same airframe on the outside, but the way it flies, the way it reacts, the way it punishes mistakes, that's all different. And here's the uncomfortable part. This isn't a judgment on the pilot. This is just human performance reality. When something unexpected happens, like your seat suddenly lurching backward, you don't rise to the occasion. You fall to the level of your training. A pilot deeply fluent in the airplane might instinctively shove the nose down or dump power the moment they feel an uncommanded pitch-up. Someone who's still learning the quirks, their brain spends critical milliseconds just processing what the airplane is doing. Was lack of training the cause of the accident? No. But it absolutely removed an entire safety buffer, a layer of instinct that could have bought a fraction of a second. And sometimes, that's all you get. Now, to understand why the seat was even able to slide back in the first place, we have to zoom out and talk about something not many viewers think about: the difference between airworthiness directives and service bulletins. An airworthiness directive, or AD, is the law. If the FAA issues an AD, you have to comply. It's mandatory, enforceable, and it becomes part of the airworthiness of the aircraft. A service bulletin, on the other hand, comes from the manufacturer. It's strongly recommended, often for safety reasons, but unless the FAA turns it into an AD, it's not legally required. And guess what? The secondary seat stop, the device Cessna created specifically to prevent runaway seat slides, is a service bulletin, not an AD. And this is where maintenance culture comes in. Some owners treat SBs with the same seriousness as ADs. Others, honestly, they don't. Maybe it's cost. Maybe it's that the airplane flew fine without it for years. Maybe it's just the classic, it won't happen to me mindset. But skipping SBs can quietly remove crucial safety nets. Cessna has a long, messy history with seat track issues: worn holes, bent locking pins, dirt-filled tracks, misaligned rollers. These are not new problems, they've caused accidents before. And the secondary stop exists specifically to stop what happened here. But because it wasn't mandatory, this airplane didn't have it. That one missing part, costing only a few $100s, could have prevented the entire chain reaction. And that's the bigger lesson here. Not all life-saving improvements are mandatory. Especially with older or modified airframes, the upgrades nobody legally forces you to install are sometimes the ones that matter the most. Now look, I'm not here to drag someone who can't defend himself, but we also can't ignore human physiology because it does play a role in pre-flight discipline. The toxicology report detected alprazolam, Xanax, and sertraline, Zoloft, in the pilot system. The NTSB was very clear. They could not determine impairment. So this is not a blame game. But here's what we can say responsibly. Xanax is on the FAA's do not fly list. Even at therapeutic doses, it can affect alertness, reaction time, and the mental sharpness required to catch small details, like physically verifying that your seat is latched. Sertraline carries warnings too, especially about drowsiness or slow decision-making until a person knows exactly how their body responds to it. Again, that doesn't mean the medications caused this crash, but it does let us talk about an honest, uncomfortable truth. Sometimes impairment isn't dramatic. Sometimes it's not even noticeable to the person affected. Sometimes it's just enough to make someone skip a step, miss a cue, or overlook something during pre-flight that they normally wouldn't miss. And aviation is brutally unforgiving of small slips. So if anything, this accident gives us another teaching moment. Self-assessment is part of flight safety. It's not about judgment, it's about acknowledging that our brains, our bodies, and our medications can influence how tightly we run our routines. So let's pull all of this together, because this accident isn't about one bad decision or one failed part. It's about alignment. Several small manageable issues lining up perfectly into one impossible emergency. You had an overweight aircraft, a center of gravity pushed far aft, a seat that wasn't physically verified as locked, a missing secondary seat stop that could have stopped the slide, seat track wear and deformation that made the latch unreliable, a pilot with limited experience in a turbine-converted Silver Eagle, and a high-performance takeoff requiring precise, confident control inputs. Any one of those issues alone, survivable, even 2 or 3 together, still recoverable, but all of them together, at the exact moment the wheels left the ground? That's the Swiss cheese model. All the holes lined up, and the moment the seat slid back, everything else clicked into place. The airplane pitched up too steeply to fight, stalled too low to recover, and rolled too fast for anyone to stop it. And that's the ultimate lesson here. In aviation, big accidents rarely come from big mistakes. They come from a stack of small ones waiting for a trigger. And on October 8th, 2021, that trigger happened at the worst possible second imaginable.